up and sit down.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Lifelong Learner with Matt and Janesh.
Well, welcome back everyone to another episode of Lifelong Learner. Matt's just trying to work out his camera angles at the moment. We're on camera today, so you get to see our lovely faces. Matthew wanted to make our listeners, well, now our viewers as well, pay for his pretty face. Isn't that right, Matthew?
Yeah, look, when we started this podcast and people said, do you have a face for podcasts? I didn't really understand what they meant. And now here we are, full circle, and I have to actually, put my makeup on and look presentable. So that's the future of podcasting, Janesh. There's no hiding behind your voice anymore. Now you've got to have a face as well. So, yeah, I feel like I should be charging more.
Great. So each week, like your taglines, if you can practice your angles, would be great. I think it'll be some good.
And I can check this out. Scrolling, look at this. I've got my own cameraman here. I just say, mate, down a little bit. Yeah, there we go.
Lovely.
Yeah. How about you? Do you have a cameraman over there?
We're all set, mate. We're all set. We're
Fixed
all set.
Camera position.
Fixed. I don't need a little leprechaun in the background there helping me out. So,
oh mate, well,
today we are talking about something interesting. We are back in a place multiple times over, and we are we're at 40 episodes ago, right? We released an episode. If you haven't seen that episode, go back and have a look. It was called Pandemic Mindset, right? So when the pandemic first hit worldwide, we released that episode. But mate, we're kind of back again. So both of us being in Victoria and Melbourne, we're in lockdown for the sixth time. Between 5 and 6, it was a brisk 10 days. 10 days of freedom, so to speak. But we're back.
Yeah, mate. I just got back when it all started, kicked off again. I just got back from a holiday in the Whitsundays, and I flew back from complete freedom, island hopping through the Whitsundays, just me and my paddle and my partner. And I got back and bang, straight into lockdown again, and straight back into, I guess, some of those old thoughts and feelings come back up, right? We're creatures of habit. And so once you go back into that environment, some of those feelings from the previous lockdowns come back as well. And depending on how you navigated it in the past affects the initial beginning of that whole process. So, yeah, what better time to have a conversation? What better conversation to have than what we're actually living through right now?
Yeah, definitely.
I think there's a lot of value for you and I to glean out here, but also hopefully for our listeners who are going through a very similar thing. So I'm actually looking forward to this because it holds me accountable to some of the things that we're going to talk about.
Yeah. All right. So let's just call a spade at the moment, and how I'll just ask it for us, all right, as opposed to just general. How are you dealing with managing, whatever word you may want to use, the on and offs, right? So we've gone through a lot of on and offs this year. We're August already this year at the moment, and we've gone through lockdown on, lockdown off, lockdown on, lockdown off, mate. How are you doing with that? Both obviously, career-wise, financially, more important, mentally. Yeah, how are you doing with all that?
I think, to be honest, I found this one a little bit rougher than the previous ones. As I said, I sort of came back from this really awesome adventure, and I've been really lucky as far as being able to get away. Just it's worked out. But coming back from that, I was actually coming back to finish up, a 4.5 year, I guess, a big part of my career came to an end, but before starting, and I guess starting slightly differently, partially coming to an end, and then something new being born out of that. And that new thing not really being able to happen made that transition really tough. When if something ends, you often you're not sad that it's over, you're grateful it happened, and then you move into the next thing with a lot of energy and a lot of passion and excitement. You're also fueled by, hopefully, if you did it well, some past success, a sense of who I am, and you're moving into the unknown, carrying that confidence. But if you don't sort of move into that new space with that momentum, then it can be a little bit tricky to get your wheels spinning, so to speak. So I found it really hard, to be honest, coming back, not finishing up the way that I really wanted. I really wanted to wrap things up in that last sort of job with my feet on the ground, really having massive impact. It didn't go that way, we went straight into a lockdown.
Yeah.
So that's been really tough. Financially devastating. When you think about, and a lot of people are in that position, you just instantly work's gone. For a lot of sole contractors who aren't in the building industry. I think if you're in the building industry, it's a little different. We're still saying that, and great, because a lot of my brothers are in that industry. But musicians, wow, like artists, people who are really, well, it's tough. So I found it quite challenging, to be honest. But allowing myself to just be has been helpful over the last couple of days. I actually, mate, I went into ISO as well, which is a whole different level of lockdown. I'm realizing, that saying where you're like, oh, how much worse could it get? Well, I actually ended up having to go into ISO, which is basically 2 weeks of lockdown, but you're not allowed any of those 4 things. Can't leave it all.
Yeah,
that sucked. I don't really want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
That ends today. So
hence why we're also doing our podcast remotely as well, due to lockdown and due to you being in ISO as well.
That is crazy. But I think it is really important that we talk and converse through this time, because hopefully this isn't something that we have to go through for much longer. And also, this has never happened before in humanity, this idea of locking down. I mean, that just the terminology. Before end of 2019, if you'd said lockdown, you would have thought prison. You would have thought, So, I mean, even the terminology is very strange. How are you doing? I mean, different perspective for you. Like I was wrapping up, finishing something and moving into something new. You're running and managing a very successful company in the outdoor industry that's sort of been, I guess, had its legs taken out from underneath it. How have you been going with it and keeping people's morale up?
I was saying to someone a couple of weeks ago, it's definitely builds resilience. That's for sure.
Yeah.
If I had chosen a different method of building resilience, I would have chosen another one. But yeah, it has definitely forced me to be super quick. So I like to think I'm getting better at deciphering press conferences in terms of what they mean. And then working with government bodies, right, which never used to have to do. Restrictions come out, but then we've got to work with government bodies to make sure that our clients have got clear understanding, and if they can come to us, if they can't come to us, and then let staff know. So it's been a lot of game time decisions, which, as you can imagine, is hard, mate. It's hard. It's you can't necessarily plan. You plan as if nothing is going to happen, and then you act in the moment accordingly, right? So that's been challenging. I'm busier now than when things are running smoothly, right? Go figure. When things are running smoothly, I have a little bit more freedom, a little bit more space. So things are hectic, and we're scurrying, and it's financially, yeah, we've taken a big hit. I think as you said, like there's a lot of sole traders, a lot of businesses, a lot of medium businesses, a lot of small businesses, some large businesses. But we also took a hit last year, so there's it's interesting. We got to look at how much longer is it going to go. So that's been interesting. I think my running races, one was supposed to be this weekend coming up, this Saturday, and one the week after. Both have been cancelled, so that's a bit of a bummer, especially because last year was a write-off on all races. That's hard for me personally to keep motivated. Where, all right, we'll push back to another race, be like, the work that you're putting in, like where's it going? And yeah, the rational and the logic brain is like, yep, it is all making you better, healthier, fitter, faster, and all of that. But the emotional brain is like, what's the point, right? Which is hard.
Yeah.
Which is hard when there is an attachment to an event, right? So I know a couple of friends had run Melbourne early or mid-July or late July, and that got cancelled due to the previous lockdown. And it was a lot of people's first, right? A lot of people's first half marathon, and some of them were kind of shattered, right? So they're still kind of training, but not really, because they don't have another goal race on. So which is hard. And I think offline we were talking about hope, right? And we did, I think it was episode 28 or 29. Go back and have a listen on learning from hope, right? And listening to another great leader of a company a couple of weeks ago, when he was talking about how he lead his team across Australia during these times. He goes, look, I give them honest, brutal truth, right? On you may lose your job, but then he goes, I give them unfaltering hope, right? Which is really interesting, right? You just go, yep, you don't sugarcoat anything. You just go, this is how it is. We may go, not necessarily go under. We are hibernating. Hours are going to be cut, all that. But the hope is like, you know what? But we're fighting to get us all back to where we were, right? And you constantly give that hope, and he goes, people hold on to that hope. He goes, we as people, as leaders, as friends, as families, that's all what people kind of have at the moment, and they're losing it, right? Rightfully so, because everyone's thinking dire. And think about just now the media. People are now glued on. Well, in Australia, like both Victoria and New South Wales are currently locked down, and they're glued to the media, right? And the media, all it is doom and gloom, right? It is all doom and gloom, and at the moment, like, unless there's a big group, a big lobby, and I don't necessarily see even if that will work, nothing is changing the government's mind at the moment to change lockdowns. So
yeah, and I think look, when you talk about optimism, I think that's, one of my challenges is that we're leaders of an industry, not of an industry. In our industry, we are leaders. Our staff look for leadership. What I find really challenging is that we're kind of a micro of the macro. When I look to our government, I look for quality leadership. I look for the things that I admire in the leaders that I respect in my industry. Yeah. And I don't see any of the qualities of great leadership. Yeah. I just don't see it. And this is my opinion, and that's all I can really express. But yeah, it's hard to digest when we are doing these things for our organisation. We're giving hope. We're encouraging people to take control of the things they can control. You know, your health, connection with family. You know, do all these things that are going to increase your immunity, which are going to protect you from a virus. We're encouraging people to stay focused on what matters, to be grateful for the small things. You know, none of these things are being directed from our government, and that's quite challenging for me. Or the acknowledgement. You know, when someone's going through struggle, one of the biggest challenges, I think, is sometimes we're very quick. We're not empathetic. We're sympathetic. You know, empathy is understanding where you're coming from. Sympathy is, oh yeah, but, you know, what about the silver lining? Oh, you could be worse. It could be, you know, think about being 30 years old during World War II or during the Great Depression. They always go to something worse. And that basically says, you know, pull yourself up, harden up and get back on. And it's like, no, let's be empathetic. And let's accept that this isn't acceptable. This isn't an okay way to be treating large numbers of people. But, you know, not but, and what is the way to remain? How do we shift people's focus into what matters and give them purpose? That's what I think you do really well. The Summit does really well. Is that we're not sweeping it under the rug. We're saying this is fucked, guys. It really is. You know, we're going to take a massive hit. We as a company, and you as an individual, you're going to be locked down. You're not going to have as much money, and you're going to have to look after yourself. You're going to have to prioritize health. If you don't, shit's going to hit the fan. So. But we're here for you, and we will support you, and we are in this together. And that's when I hear that from the Summit or anyone involved in the company that, you know, that we work for, I believe it, because the actions match. Yeah, they match what are being said. And if they don't, then it becomes really challenging. You feel isolated. You feel like, no, they don't understand. And I think right now that's happening, that there's a lot of people feel like the government and some of the officials within it don't understand what's going on. They don't understand health. You know, health isn't just preventing things from outside of our system getting in. It's also what's happening on the inside of a person. And if they don't have hope, if they aren't maintaining a great mindset, if their mental health is starting to really struggle, then their physical health will follow. And it doesn't matter. Like, there's not just one thing to be wary of. You know, we've got heart disease, we've got cancer, we've got these things are leading killers. Yeah. You know, 1 in 3 people in Australia are going to die of cancer. Those numbers are really serious. And right now we're focused on something that has a far less likelihood of killing us. And we're in a very fearful state. There's just a lot of ramifications from that. I mean, personally, I had an accident the other day, Dinesh. I fell off my skateboard and I hurt my arm. And I had this big hematoma on my arm, a massive ball of just blood. And my partner said, oh, maybe you should go to the doctor. I said, I can't go to the doctor. I'm in isolation. She said, after isolation, you should get that checked out. And it just made me feel that I wonder how many people aren't actually going to get checked on things that normally they would. But because we're in a pandemic, they're fearful of going to hospitals. They're fearful. So these little other things that normally could be addressed and fixed quite quickly are being avoided, which later is going to cause problems because people are fearful. You know, we should be reducing people's fear, not encouraging it. I think the media's...
But then also the individual takes responsibility on that, right? Like
that's true. Absolutely.
We can't control what the media does, but you can control if you watch it. You can't control what the government does, but you can control how you respond to it, right? So each individual, they got to take responsibility on what their response is, right? Not saying it's not great, not saying that it's going to be better for other people, better or worse, right? But because they take responsibility of it, right? So I think what we said a while ago is like you can choose what you do during these times. You can wallow in it. You can go, I'm just not going to do anything. I can't do anything. And throw yourself a pity party for all lockdown and go, you know what? Once this finishes, then I will, right? But the reality is it might be a long time till it finishes, right? So this current one was a week, then it was 2 weeks, and now it's 4 weeks, right? So will it finish in another 2 weeks? Hopefully, but we don't know. So the question that I have for us and for our listeners is, what are you doing with this time? Right? It's time. Yes, you might be working from home. You might not have your hours are cut. You might not have a job at the moment, but what are you choosing to do with your time right now? Are you just kind of just going with the motions? Are you just watching Netflix? What are you doing? This sort of time, you're not going to get again, right? Like we said last year, it's a time that you can choose to build. You might get again, right? Right?
Well, you might get it 6 times over over the next 18 months.
I know. But it's a time that you can choose to hone your craft in. It's a time to upskill, time to enroll in that course online. It's a time to build that back end of a business. Time, like, you can use this time, right? It's not and I can see a lot of people not necessarily using this time, or they're doing the work from home thing, which is fine, and then they're hating it, right? They're not going, you know what, how do I just call some more friends or get on a Zoom and catch up with friends, or, you know what, I'm just going to be creative in what I cook this week or weekend, right?
I think that's a really valid point. I think there's 2 things here. There's acknowledge where you are, and it's shit, and have voice that, get it out, so it's not in you and festering. Do have a pity party if you need, but get that shit over with, because that will destroy you. So do it. Honor that feeling. It is shit. Find some people to bitch and moan about. Voice that victim, because it exists. But once you've done that, then let's focus on what you can do now. What can you control? And maybe this is the time that you get in shape. Maybe this is the time you build a routine around your health. You prioritize that as opposed to finances. For now, the wealth that you want to acquire is the wealth of mind, body, and spirit. That's something you can do. You can train. You can start practicing drinking more water. You can be doing some practices for mental, your mental resilience, hot, cold. You could start experimenting with breathing. You could be reading those books you never have time to read. I think you're onto something there, and we are about being, having a I wouldn't say a positive outlook, an optimistic outlook, and taking control of our lives.
Yeah, mate. So I'm going to put you on your spot here. I'm going to put you on the spot here, then, right? So
go on, do it.
I will, because I kind of know the answer, but I want our listeners to know the answer. I want to know how you will vocalize it for our listeners. So, mate, during this,
I feel like you painted me into a corner. No,
not at all. So, knowing that we have time, you're talking about using this time, right? Mate, how are you going building your coaching practice, mate? How is that back end going?
Not being a priority, Jeanette. It's so loaded with you. I could feel myself just slowly getting backed into a corner.
Hey, you're the one who backed yourself in.
Speaks.
You're the one who backed yourself in. You're like, oh, this is the time.
But I also gave myself a way out, mate, because I guess that's right. Like, I do have a back end of many things to build, but I'm focused on the front end, and the front end is my physical and mental well-being.
The back end also is what drives the front end.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah. And you don't get this time again, Matt. You don't get this time again.
Yeah. I think I noticed the difference for me, jokes aside, that there was which is surprising, and I feel a bit vulnerable sharing, but this one rocked me a lot. And sent me into a bit of a tailspin. And I've got all the strategies and tools. I mean, that's bloody hell. That's what I'm employed to do, is to train people in this stuff. It really did. It spun me 360, and I was left just not, disenchanted. A lot of melancholy and the questions and the focus. You know, when you're good at something, you're aware when you're not being good at it. There's no, you know what I mean? You can't pretend because you know. And so it's about acceptance. But for me, I know I need to get my mental and physical world right. If I can dial that in, if I can build the habits around being physical, being playful, you know, working out every day, hydrating properly. Some of these practices, I'm doing some of the stillness practices, which I actually picked up at the very beginning of this pandemic, which is really cool. Now I've got 18 months into them and they're going really well. But that when I got back, that all got thrown out. I didn't have these routines. I'd been paddling around the Whitsundays for 8 days. And so it threw out everything. You know, it was a great adventure. But it threw everything out and then came back into a lockdown. So for me, the focus is on my physical routines because I know if I get my body right, then my head will follow. And then when my head follows, then I can start using it to build the back end of businesses. And with an optimistic mindset, build something sustainable because, and it sucks, the physical world right now is so unpredictable. You can't create certainty there. So the only way to create certainty is through online platforms, is through.
And I could imagine that's a challenge for you. You're very much a in person.
Oh, so massive.
Do you think that's part of not just yours, but a lot of other people's resistance where you go, I'll just wait till things go back to normal and I'll build something that's in person. Right? Like it's like I don't want to do a tech platform. I don't want to do just an online business, right? But the reality, do you think, I don't think the reality is that in terms of what's happening, but yeah, do you think that is a current limiting factor for some?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it is, man. Like I know my long-term goal was never to be sitting behind a screen completely physically disconnected from people trying to connect. It's an incredible service to provide. In my mind, it was an incredible service to provide when needed. But human connection, physical connection, you know, and what I want to teach people often is around and is taught best through that mode. Yeah, there's resistance. And there's also a deep resistance in if we are all doing this, then that becomes the new norm. Fuck that. No, I don't accept that that's the new norm. That's not a world I want to fucking live in. And I'll say it avidly to you and to anyone listening that no fucking way. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life behind screens scared of fucking everyone. It's just not happening. And so there is this thing in me that says, fuck that shit. I'm not going to build a business and a platform out of something that I don't want to be doing long term. But that's also a fear-based thinking.
It's also standing in the rain and going, it's not raining. Like, it's fucking raining, mate. It's you can choose to. The strategy is not to go, it's not raining. It's not that. It's like how do I enjoy the rain or find some sort of enjoyment, right? Like I hear you and I appreciate you. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to be in or living the way that we are at the moment. But the reality is we're in it, right? And it's been happening, you said, for 18 months. And is it going to change? Hopefully, I can have hope. Do I have certainty it's going to change anytime soon? I don't have certainty, right? So it's like going, I'm standing in the rain and I got to acknowledge it is raining. I can't stand there and go, nah, I'm not, it's not raining. It's not raining. I don't like it. It's not raining because I can't change the fucking rain. And the longer I say I want to change the rain, it's like the heavier the storm gets. And the quicker that you can enjoy that storm or that rain, and finding glimmers, right? I think that's really important for people right now, is finding glimmers of enjoyment. Talking to a friend the other day, he's just taken up bike riding, right? He bought a bike off Facebook Marketplace. Facebook, there's your free plug. Well, we expect millions in the mail. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, because the gym's closed, he picked up a bike and he's loving going for rides, right? And he goes, before that, he goes, I just would never get on the bike, right? And he goes, I like to just ride by myself, and it's gives him that time, that still time, that time to kind of process his thoughts, which is really interesting, right? And he's found that thing where, again, like people need to find their thing, and I think it's super important. And it might not be the same thing as last year, right? Be okay for it not to be your thing from last year. Like, have fun with it. Like, create. In a time that lacks creativity, this is your time to create and find your thing. And I think last time we talked about learning a skill, it could be just trying a new cuisine, like a new meal, whatever it may be. I think finding your thing is super important. Finding that thing and experimenting with what brings you joy. It might not be building a business, right? It'd be a hobby. It could be painting. You could be getting to some books. I would say to people, or recommend, spend less time in front, even though we're in front of a screen right now, less time in front of a TV, all right? So you're in front of your screen day in, day out anyway for work. Get outside, play, do something in your house, your apartment, or wherever you may be, and you find your thing. I think it's, what would you say, and we're going to wrap up because I know we're nearly at time, if people don't know how to find their thing, right, or their lockdown 6.0 thing, what questions would you encourage them to ask themselves to help them find their thing, and not just go to their normal, like, for example, someone goes, oh, are you just going to go for a run, Janesh? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll go for a run. That's part of my normal routine, but I wouldn't say that's my thing at the moment. I'll still run for sure. Still bring me joy, but it wouldn't be my thing. So what questions would you pose for our listeners to help them find their thing now?
It's a really good question. I think sometimes, often, we'll do more for others than we will for ourselves. I noticed that with me. So having a think about how you can positively affect others is everyone's thing. It feels incredible when we're there to support someone. So I would encourage us to, as you said, search for the glimmers for our thing. But often those things come to us when we're in a really good mental state. And often we find our thing through service of others. If we can pour ourselves into service and supporting and contributing to others, our thing just happens to happen along the way, as opposed to searching selfishly for something that's going to make me feel better. I would say, how can I ask questions around who needs my A game? Who can I support today? How can I support my own mental and physical well-being? Maybe go back to when you were a kid. Have a think about, some of the games that you were playing. If you've got kids right now, I know it's really, really challenging, but it's also a fucking blessing. Remember that, because kids are incredible at playing. They're incredible at using their imagination. Like you said, man, you've got time now, and really, what is more important than sort of that time? If I had kids, with those kids, let them teach you how to play again, I would say, because they're masters at it, absolute masters.
And I'm no expert on it, right? But the kids' currency, right? Like their way of parents showing or receiving love, right, is not things. It's time. right? It is
Yeah.
time. And, we got fucking loads of time at the moment, right? So, I think that's great. I think if you do have them or you do have access to kids, don't go steal someone else's kids. But,
that would be weird.
right? But like using that playful energy, right? And it's just spending time, right? They just go
Absolutely.
just spending time.
Yeah. I think the answer there, play really is the answer. Because right now it feels like there isn't a future. The future is this. It's up, down, in, out, in, out. But play it takes away time and space.
Yeah.
Lose yourself.
It softens the edges at the moment, right?
Yeah, and it's not about anything except being enjoyed, having fun. And so, I would say we all need to focus and prioritize on play. Play is about creating, being spontaneous, and allowing yourself not to take yourself too seriously. Be silly, and I think actually through that modality or through that idea of play, you will probably uncover some things that can support your mental well-being, and maybe financially. I think play might be the answer for a lot of us. Stop trying to do stuff to get something or somewhere, and just be where you are and make it joyful. And that actually, if you can do that, it starts to break down some of these limiting beliefs and eradicate shitty questions around, why is this happening to me? Is there going to be a future? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Out of that space, it doesn't fucking matter, because it's about connection, and it's about this, what can I do now? And so I appreciate that kids are super challenging during this time when you're doing homeschool, you're trying to run a business, or I bow down before all parents. I don't have kids, I'm alone. But there is the flip side, that they do also have this incredible ability to use their imagination and be playful. So I would say tap into that. For those of us who don't have kids, remember what it was like to be a kid. And it doesn't matter. Nothing else really matters right now except our mindset, how we feel, and play could be the answer for you.
Yeah. I think by playing you're gonna find your thing, right? Or play might be your thing, right? And bring a sense of play too. If a sense of play is not around your thing, then it's probably not your thing, to be honest. We're gonna wrap up there and leave you all to ponder that, and just experiment with different things this week. And it is an interesting time. You get to choose what you do with it, right? To a certain extent, right? So I think people say, I can't do this, I can't do that. But I'm like, yeah, but what about all the things you can do, right? That usually
focus on that list.
Yeah. Usually you're too busy. Usually you've got lots of commitments on the weekends. No one's got any commitments on the weekends, right? So do that project that you were waiting and that you never have time on, right? Like, do some of that. Don't let time go away, and use it wisely, right? So
I absolutely agree, and I do sense the energy of a wrap up here. I do just want to just touch it because I'd like to do this to you, Jeanette. You mentioned glimmers. I love that notion. A lot of us in the personal development world are aware of triggers, the things that trigger us. And we spend a lot of energy being aware of the triggers, trying to mitigate the triggers. That's all well and good. That's managing unresourceful negative space. What about the positivity? What are we putting in there that's optimistic? And that's your glimmers. Create moments that are glimmers. And we can do that. We can mitigate and manage the triggers. And if we focus on the glimmers, those moments that really light us up, and often they are around silliness, playfulness, they have no purpose other than they make us feel good.
Yeah. And the glimmers are going to get bigger, right? By, as you said,
Yeah.
like focusing on it, the glimmers are going to get bigger and bigger.
And out of that space, out of that higher vibrational frequency, we make better decisions. And we're starting to, you know, the things that we focus on out of that space will serve us versus triggers, trying to mitigate things that activate my, you know, my negative emotional state. When we're planning a life out of that space, it's less resourceful. So if people are like, I don't have time to play, I can't see, trust us, it's going to serve your mental and physical well-being, but also what comes out of that could serve you in the future. It's very resourceful as well. It's not just a waste of time. Do it for the joy and know that some good will come out of it also. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
Well, thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in, and let us know if you do enjoy our video. But we'll also still be on all our normal platforms as well for audio as well. But till next time, have a good one, guys.
Take it easy. Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Lifelong Learner. If you liked our episode and what you heard, please leave us a review on the platform that you've been listening on. And to find out more about us, please tune in to lifelonglearnerpodcast.com, and you can find out some updates about what's happening and get updates on as episodes drop. Thanks again.